Hey everybody, I'm Eric Grubbs with Heritage Auctions. I'm in the music and memorabilia department. You're probably wondering, are there going to be auctions? We're scheduled to have one in a few days on April 4th and April 5th. Yes, we are going to have them. Check them out on ha.com for all the items that we have coming up. Yes, we're having a quarantine. I'm shooting this in the den of my house. My wife and I have been homebound since late last week, and so, well, the auctions are going on, so why don't we talk about what's going to be in these auctions, not just in a few days, but for the rest of the year. So while you know that Heritage always has plenty of Beatles stuff, thanks to the Dennis and Connie Daly collection, there's always sorts of great stuff coming in. And we have all these great vintage posters from the 50s, 60s, 70s to show you. You can find beautiful stories and pictures of those things, but there's a bunch of other stuff that say you might not know about. So I decided to pick out like a handful of stuff to talk about that you might have not known about. So let's start. First of all, I am excited to share with you guys a signed copy of Amy Winehouse's 2006 second album, Back to Black. Now, on the cover of it, she just signed it Amy with a black felt tip, probably a Sharpie. And it's in a pretty great condition, I'll say that. I mean, the jacket, I graded it at near mint 8, and the vinyl itself didn't look like it had ever been played. There had been a little bit of creasing here and there, but for the most part, it would look great as a display item. Lots of people, myself included, really loved that Amy Winehouse record. Now, this was not her first record, it was her second record, but it's her best known. It's the one that has Rehab and Love is a Losing Game and Me and Mr. Jones. What you know Amy Winehouse for, and it was signed by her, and she unfortunately passed away a few years after that record came out. So that's the first item that I wanted to talk about, and again, you can find this listed on ha.com. Next item, a guitar. I couldn't find the serial number on it, but it's a guitar, and it's a pretty nice looking guitar with all sorts of different colors going on. But here's the really exciting thing. It's signed by all 7 principal members of the Eagles. That includes Randy Meisner, Don Felder, Don Henley, Glenn Frey, Timothy B. Schmit, and Joe Walsh, and yes, all 7 members have signed this. And it's not just a matter of the pickguard would sign, the entire guitar is signed with a silver felt tip. So that's something I've never seen before. And, you know, kind of the story of the Eagles is like, well, people prefer the classic era, or, you know, it was all the fighting about money and drugs and all this. And it's like, well, this guy doesn't really matter that much. No, all 7 members are important. Timothy B. Schmit was the last bassist to join the group, but he sang I Can't Tell You Why, which was a huge hit off the long run. So all 7 principal important members of the group, and you can check that out on ha.com. Now, moving on, if you've seen any of the other videos that I've been a part of, you've seen me drool and go on and on and on about these grunge posters that we have. I'm super excited about this because of the fact that this is very much my generation. Because of alternative rock and grunge, it really changed my life, not just the music that I listened to, but how I saw the world. And so when we got this large collection of posters from the Pacific Northwest, from the 80s until like the late 90s, I got very, very excited. Gary Schrum knew that he was getting a very exceptional collection of posters. They're extremely rare. I can't stress that enough. They're incredibly limited in the amount that were made, because a lot of the stuff that was made was thrown away. So I want to talk about a few of the posters, and these next 2 are not really grunge. They're just more of like, when I saw them, I flipped out. First of all, Public Enemy headlining at Rock Candy, and far down below, the very first opener, Rage Against the Machine. And this is from 1992. Rage Against the Machine's self-titled album was just now coming out. They were They were a baby band. They only formed like the year before. Tom Morello throughout the 80s, he was like playing Dio and, really ripping it up on the guitar. But in the early 90s, you were hearing Tom Morello play guitar in completely different new ways, whether it's being influenced by jazz or hip hop. He put that all into his guitar. And plus you have this solid backing rhythm section of Brad Wilk and Timmy C. And then you have the incredible frontman of Zach De La Rocha, who came from inside out. He came from the hardcore scene, and he had a lot to say, and he put it all in his lyrics. And so the fact that Rage Against the Machine was an opener for Public Enemy makes perfect sense in 1992, and the condition of that poster is in near mint. Now we also have another Rage Against the Machine poster, also playing Rock Candy, also from 1992, and it's just a month later, also in near mint. This time though, it's signed on the verso by the designer Jeff Kleinsmith. We have a bunch of Jeff Kleinsmith's posters that he signed in pencil. That's the very common thing to do for posters designers, is to sign it with pencil. We also have a bunch of stuff of Mike King's, and either it was signed in the bottom right corner on the front or on the back side on the verso. So you can check that out on ha.com. Now, let's talk about grunge itself. And while we have Nirvana, we have Pearl Jam, back when they were known as Mookie Blaylock, we have a lot of those on posters. Something that when I saw this, I couldn't believe that there was actual documentation of this. And it's from Alice in Chains, but it's not the Alice in Chains that we all know. This is Alice in Chains, with just an N, no I-N. Story goes that Lane Staley, he sang in a hair metal band in the mid-80s. Well, he wanted the band name to be Alice in Chains, I-N Chains. Well, his bandmates didn't want it to be I-N, so they changed it to Alice in Chains. And they were just straight up hair metal of those days. Sorry, Eddie Trunk, it's called hair metal. It's hard rock, but it's also hair metal. Can we agree? Okay, so this band is around for a few years. And then at the month of this show, in 1987, Jerry Cantrell and Lane Staley meet at a party, and they discuss talking about forming a new band. They have a few different names when they form, but they can't decide on what they're going to be called. So Lane suggests, how about Alice in Chains? Now, one of his bandmates in Alice in Chains didn't like it. And by the way, this had nothing to do with how Guns N' Roses spelled their name. It was completely unrelated. It was just that Lane suggested, how about Alice in Chains? And one of his bandmates didn't like it, but he later acquiesced and said, okay, you can do this. But this is documentation of the hair metal band from 1987, at pretty much the height of hair metal. And we have a near mint minus copy of it. Again, I don't know of a lot of posters from this era. This is extremely rare. And I hope this lands into the hands of somebody who's a huge historian of the Pacific Northwest, because really, if it wasn't for the Pacific Northwest, as well as a lot of the small towns all throughout America, we wouldn't have had the alternative rock, grunge takeover that happened in the early 90s. Now, kind of as a byproduct of, 91, 92, things really change in pop culture. We have some artifacts that also really got me excited when I saw these, and they're from Beck Hansen, as he was born, but everybody knows him as Beck. Now, before he had a really big hit with the song Loser, I remember MTV played it realistically about 4 times a day, not every hour, but 4 times a day. But this Beck video had this hip-hop feel to it, but also a folk feel to it, and a really catchy chorus. And in that video, there are a few shots of him wearing an Oshkosh beanie. That beanie is in our auction. And it looks like it was barely worn. It's in very good condition. And not only do we have the beanie, but we also have the blue and white Kool-Aid scarf that Beck wore for the cover of the One Foot in the Grave album cover. And it's a kind of an iconic picture. I mean, it's like when I worked at Best Buy and I was stocking CDs, I would have Mellow Gold and Odelay, but then there would be One Foot in the Grave, and I'd always be like, what's this all about? And turns out, I remember Kennedy Montgomery on MTV saying that, you know, Beck was also cutting indie records while he was making records for Geffen. And, well, we actually have some of those as well. We got a bunch of great Beck stuff. I can't stress that enough. Is that we have cassette tapes of his early material. We also have a handful of different copies of his first single called MTV Makes Me Want to Smoke Crack. We also have a split 7-inch that he did under a different name, but it was with J Church. J Church was this super prolific kind of proto-emo punk band that put out tons and tons of 7-inches, but I never knew that Beck had done a split 7-inch with them. But we have that in our next auction. And, you know, there's just, I mean, I'm just touching the surface on what we have. You can check out all the listings on ha.com 24/7. It's always being updated. You want to track how bidding is going, we have an option for that. You can find all of this information on our website, ha.com. Check it out. Thank you so much for watching. And we're going to do these as much as we can until we can go back into the office and talk more about this stuff. But I hope everybody is doing well. Hope you all are well. And we'll see you guys soon. And check us out on April 4th for this next auction. I'm Eric Grubbs. Thanks.